Hey, Patrick, how's
Hi.
Denver?
It's beautiful. Lovely, lovely time of year to be here. Happy
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
happy Thanksgiving to you too. Since you are you're about to get on a plane, you probably have an automobile. I hope you don't have to get into a train for U.S. Thanksgiving, but yeah, it's one of those trips. Denver, Vegas, normally would be fun, but doing it on the U.S. Thanksgiving, I guess yesterday was a big travel day.
Yeah, it's
Any,
not too bad.
yeah. So welcome to everyone watching. This is Canucks This Week, brought to you by Woody's RV, woodysrv.com, Western Canada's largest selection of RVs. Um, yeah, speaking of automobiles, I mean,
I will say
I think
Woody's
it's a
RV
good way
would
to
be
get to
very.
LV.
I'll say Woody's
Yeah,
RV would be very handy in this situation because for those who don't know, the Denver airport is like in another state. It's
yeah,
so
it
far out
is.
of town.
It has a
Now
really weird horse statue.
there's a horse. There's all these amazing conspiracy theories. Look them up. It's just absolutely fun. It's the most bizarre place. I will say this, Paul. I'm actually probably. I mean, I will take. I guess I'll end up having take a car in Vegas, but I will take the train. There's a nice train that takes you to the airport here in Denver. Very relaxing. Don't have to deal with whatever.
Well, there you go. You are planes, trains, and automobiles
I'm gonna
today.
do
Yeah,
trains, planes, and automobiles today. Exactly.
excellent. You and Drance. Those aren't two pillows. There you go.
Oh God, no.
It's good we can laugh about things, in particular the Canucks. Um, bit of a bright spot. I know we do this prediction every week about
Yeah.
how many games they're going to win in the next week, and we'll do that later. You said one; they actually won two. They did lose to
Ooh.
Vegas, where they collapsed.
Yeah.
You know, they could be on a 3-game winning streak. Um, let's start off with an obvious one. There's been so much doom and gloom about this team. GM doesn't want the coach. Coach, knows he's a lame duck. He's not going to be here long term. Players aren't performing. Blow up the core. Go for tank for Bedard. They're 3 points out of a playoff spot. Is that a mirage? Or
Uh,
I know there's a bunch of teams they have to climb over. Is this team really having such a dreadful season, or have they pulled themselves back into the mix?
well, they're they're on the edge of the mix, shall we say? I mean, part of the story here is that I would say that both the Flames and the Oilers have not been as strong as they were last year. The Flames, maybe are still, I think, adjusting to their post Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau life. So in many ways, I'm sort of waiting to see how that all evolves. They certainly have obviously lots of talent that they were able to sort of rebuild their team with. The Oilers, I think, have been a bit of a surprise. Obviously having the best player in the world and then one of the top 3 or 4 guys next to him has always been a thing. Like that's always powered them offensively. I think the feeling was that they'd sort of under Jay Woodcroft had figured out how to play things 2 ways. But in the end, you look at it, they've given up 72 goals in 20 games, and that's the Canucks have given up 79, and we've been criticizing the Canucks defensively. Well, the Oilers aren't far behind, so that's a lot of your story here, and one of the interesting things we're starting to see, and it was a really interesting Twitter thread by my pal Cam Sharon yesterday on Wednesday, looking at how actually goals are starting to become much more predictive than they used to be because people understand shooting so much better. So the you look at the Pacific Division standings and you have Vegas in first place plus 25 in terms of goals. The Kraken are in second place plus 12, and then every other team is in the negative. You've got the Kings -6, you got the Flames -3, you got the Oilers -6, you got the Canucks -9, you got the Sharks, who the Canucks are playing on Sunday, -13. It is a very strange situation in the Pacific that is certainly helping the Canucks. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So yeah, I mean, the division has not run away from them. We always say, I mean, it has been shown that sort of roughly 3/4 of the teams in a playoff spot at American Thanksgiving, because generally it is about quarter of the way through the season, and once you've hit 20 games, a lot of the numbers really start saying this is who this team really is. 3/4 of the teams that are in a playoff spot now will be in a playoff spot at the end of the season. And right now, the Canucks sit 6th in the division. Like you said, they're only 3 points out. I mean, they're 3 points back of the Oilers, who are tied with 3 teams in the Central And that's the other thing to remember in all this is that it's not just chasing. If you're chasing fourth spot in the division, I mean, of course, Canucks would like to say they're chasing third spot, but they're actually 7 points back of LA. But if you're chasing fourth spot in the division, you're also chasing teams from the Central. And that, I think, more than anything, is what will consistently make this conversation complicated. But no, it's not over for the Canucks. They've done just enough to keep themselves in the mix. They've won 3 of 4, if you want to talk about it in those terms. But yeah, they've got to keep pushing. Saturday, I mean, all the games are big, but Saturday's a big game. They certainly need to come away with a split this weekend to keep themselves moving forward. Certainly, they've got to win in San Jose. But then, yeah, you look at the rest of the way the rest of the week plays out. They were at home against the Capitals, a team that they played close, and they were not playing very well early in the season, but they played close. Perhaps could have gotten a win. But that's a game you certainly have to think they win. And of course, they host the Panthers, who are, one of the toughest teams in the league next Thursday. And, you just sort of see every game matters. Every game is important. And, they can't just look all the way and say, okay, well, we've got the Coyotes and the Canadians coming in at the end of next week. Like, every game, there's just no ability to look at it. They really do have to look at each game coming up and try to win them all.
Well, yeah, they're 3 points back of Edmonton, same amount of games played. They're 4 back to Calgary. Calgary have a game in hand. If you do look at the last 10, Canucks 5-4-1, Oilers are 3-7-0, Flames 4-3-3. So you do find that teams will have an ebb and flow within the season, and the Oilers aren't going to stay on a 3-7 pace.
No.
I don't believe that. They'll get things straightened out. So you're right. The Canucks have cut out their margin of error, really, but. You mentioned something interesting. You talked about how the Canucks weren't playing well when they played Washington earlier. Are they playing well now?
They're certainly playing a lot better, and I think the performance that we've seen on the whole the last 4 games, and that was something Bruce Boudreau highlighted, and I after the win in Colorado, and I he was right in saying so that you look at sort of how they beat the Kings, right? They kept the middle of the ice under control. They didn't allow a lot of east-west passes that make their goalie move. You look at the Buffalo game. I mean, the Buffalo game was bizarre and wild, and obviously only won 5-4. But there were a lot of things they did well defensively. And the thing to remember, that I think what's kind of screwing their heads is that because we're now in this high goal environment, like people are scoring lots, and that has really changed the dynamic of understanding what things are, because we're usually thinking, good defense means sort of 2 goals. You're keeping them 2 goals. Well, it's kind of turning into a league where you're kind of got to have to keep them to 3 goals, but 2 goals would be great. But in the end, they played well for 15 minutes against Vegas on Monday. That they actually pulled a lead out in the third period. They came back, and then they just couldn't. They just almost got deer in the headlights, almost, or couldn't believe they're in this situation. And the lesson was, in the end, they just kept playing. And against, I mean, admittedly, a somewhat wounded Colorado team, missing Landeskog, missing Nichushkin, Rantanen left part of the game. They lost Evan Rodriguez during the game. But nonetheless, playing a Colorado team at altitude in Denver, they did a really good job at 5-on-5 of, again, controlling the middle of the ice. They really started figuring that part out. They're not a perfect team. They have lots of flaws still, but they're doing that well. They forecheck really well. They haven't been amazing at creating opportunities, but they did enough last night. And you look at other than the Ethan Bear goal, which was scored from the point on 4-on-4, there are 3 goals scored at 5-on-5 were all right on top of the crease, and that has been a consistent thing all season. They've had no issues putting the puck in the net, whether that's at even strength, whether that's been on the power play. In the end, what we've been talking about all year is how well will they be able to defend. They should be able to get good goaltending. Spencer Martin obviously has been fantastic. Thatcher Demko, was great on Saturday. Sounds like he was dealing with some kind of bug on Monday, but seems better. That's something that they know they can lean on, but they have to give their goalies a chance. And for the most part, in the last week to 10 days, that's what they've been doing.
All right, let's start. You have a big splash that will come. I know people, these videos, we tend to push them over the course of a week, but we're recording this on Thursday, obviously after the Avalanche game, prior to the Golden Knights game. Now you're doing a big splash, which you'll be able to find at province.com, vancouversun.com, you do this weekly numbers package. We're blowing it up a little bit, and you're picking a number from each player to sort of reflect where this team is at the quarter mark. Who've been the Canucks' best 4 players?
Best four players? Well, I think it's. I mean, it's pretty easy. It's Bo Horvat. It's Elias Pettersson. It's Quinn Hughes. And then I think actually a surprising one is going to be. I mean, I'm going to say I think it's been Luke Schenn, partly because of what he brings to the table, and that he is that physical presence. But there was a pass, for instance, last time he made that was a you're a soccer guy, diagonal passes, right? Like you want to create motion, get people moving,
split the defense, pull people out of position.
And that's what Luke Schenn, he made a pass from the left side on near the Canucks' bench to the far right side where Elias Pettersson was standing, and it was blue line to blue line. And it's the kind of pass that stretches the game, and he has got those talents, and he's been in many ways a great partner for Quinn Hughes. I just think he's having a fantastic season. He's trying to be that presence. He's trying to set the tone for what his team needs to be. And I just think, I mean, obviously, like I said, the Horvat stuff's obvious. The guy's tied for the league leading goals. He's one of the best faceoff men in the league. He's just been a fascinating story. I've written a couple stories in the past week about a guy that's evolved his game. He's picking up. He's shooting better. He's finding space better. Some of that's because he's been working with Adam Oates. He's just done a nice job of figuring these things out. Pettersson has just been such a two-way force, and clearly is forcing his coach to recognize who his number one center really is, and it's not who he wants it to be, which is JT Miller, but it's going to be Elias Pettersson, because he's just so much better two ways. Better in his own end. He wins. He reads the play better. He takes the puck away, and he's the Canucks' leading scorer as a result. He is just single-handedly, every time he's on the ice, he's dragging his team into the fight. And then Quinn Hughes, I mean, how do you argue with that? The guy has just done so much with the puck. He's making things happen. When those four players are on the ice, the Canucks have a chance. It's been the rest that's taken a while to come along, and we'll see if they're able to sustain it. Obviously, they still aren't a 500 team. I mean, let's remember that, right? Like you are what your record says you are. Especially once you hit 20 games. And this is a team again that still hasn't won enough. We thought they'd be in the playoff mix, but they haven't won enough, and they've had a lot of defensive issues. But like I said, recently they've been playing well, and those four guys have been consistent all year. There's been no doubt about all four of those guys all season.
A little surprised. Schenn's a great story. A little surprised you didn't have Spencer Martin in there, but I'm guessing he would have been number 5, which is a remarkable story on its own. We'll focus on that more maybe next week. Next 4 worst players so far this year.
Ooh, tough one.
Not really. Tough one, only that you have to pick 4.
Yeah. I mean, JT Miller obviously had a tough start. I mean, he's the third leading scorer, but he's had the defensive issues have been a concern. And I mean, we've talked so much about that. It's been pretty clear. He's a nice guy. Riley Stillman's had such a tough go. Canucks brought him in to be a hard-working, hard-to-play against kind of guy, and he's struggled. He's just, bad reads, getting out of position, turnovers. I mean, there was, people making comparisons to Lucas Spezza, and that's never a thing you want. That's been a tough go for him. I'm hesitant to put Thatcher Demko in there because it's been such a tough start, or he's been sort of rounding the corner, but he only has 1 win, and he's paid to win.
Right?
Is it 2? Oh, sorry, 2 wins. Yes. Yeah, sorry, 2 wins. But I mean, it was so long he only had 1. That's why I forgot the second one. But
not Vegas, sorry, LA.
LA, yeah, that's right. It's just been such a tough go for him, and that's been a huge part of the story. I mean, we look at how much he was the story last season, papering over defensive issues. That he hasn't been able to do that. Now I think there are some signs that he's finally turning the corner here. But we'll see how things go. It's a bit of a grab bag to figure out who else we're talking about, partly because of rules. I mean, I think there's probably a case for people would make for Tyler Myers. I think Tyler Myers has mostly been fine. He's not there to create anything anymore. He's not. We actually haven't seen a lot of the kind of, oh my God, kind of gaffes that we used to be used to. So I'm not going to put him in. I do think we do have to, in the end, put Oliver and Larson because he's had a lot of just tough nights. I think he's been better of late, but there were a number of tough nights. And because he is such a high-profile player, you expect a lot from him in terms of relative terms. He just hasn't been good enough. And then, it's tough to pick here. I mean, your options are a guy like Tanner Pearson who's been injured, hasn't been producing a ton. I'm not clear to me right now if he were healthy where he goes back in the lineup. I mean, he's probably going to get back in the lineup, but I'm not sure where you put him in given how everyone's playing. Vasily Podkolzin obviously is a spare part right now. Hasn't scored. Probably have to go with Podkolzin just because sort of the disappointment factor. Just hasn't been able to make an impact on the game, and it's not like he hasn't had opportunities. He's been playing. He's had power play time when he's been in there. He's had a chance to play with, on one of the scoring lines, and he just hasn't been able to put it together for whatever reason. Connor Garland, I think, probably is an option. Obviously got involved with that no goal last night. I think he's struggled at times to find a clear role. But, I mean, it is that mix. It's sort of like you said, how do you pick four guys? There's a whole bunch of kind of, players that I think we, in the end, kind of say more mediocre than anything. And obviously, in the end, with a team that's been defending as badly as it has, if I'm only, I've kind of picked two defensemen. How do I not pick three? But anyway, I mean, that's kind of, I've given you more than four there. I think I probably would have to go with Podkolzin as my fourth guy just because he has
Patrick, I think that's a great point. As you're sitting here, I've seen other people when they're doing their sort of quarter pole marks, just absolutely trashing Pearson. I mean, there's so many guys at the bottom of the roster, and that's why I think at this point, after all the angst, you scratch your head and go, they're only 3 points behind the Oilers because honestly, 30 games between Podkolzin and Besser. Besser did have some injuries, so he's played 14. Podkolzin's played 16. 2 goals between the two of them.
Yeah.
But if you were to say that at the start of the season, that the guy, the most talented youngster that they have on the forward line, well, I'd still put him in the prospect category rather than some other perhaps young players like, you can say Pettersson's still young, but people were expecting more from Podkolzin this year, expecting Besser to hopefully get back to his best. Now some of those personal issues were behind him. 30 games and 2 goals? And the fact is, you said goal scoring hasn't been their issue. Imagine if they had those two guys going, where this team could be.
Yeah, and in many ways, it's that two-way aspect. That you're going to make an impact. Those, both those players are being put in roles now. I mean, Pearson started the year with JT Miller, and I've been a huge fan of Tanner Pearson's game, but like he shouldn't be on your, what ostensibly is supposed to be your first line. He is a depth winger. He's a guy that's supposed to be, basically reliable, and he generally is a pretty reliable player. But it is. In many cases, and that's why I was a bit hesitant to put him in there because I think he was miscast in his role for so much so much of the early season. But Podkolzin's a guy that you need to know that he can be sort of a plug and play at this point. Put him in the lineup, and he's going to be a useful impact player. And neither of them scored. It's really simple. I mean, like I said, you're a team that hasn't defended well. That's on everyone. But if you're not going to be able to score, what are you even doing here? And right now, both those guys, I think, are on the outside looking in. Pearson is here on the trip. He skated the other day. In fact, they've got all their guys on the trip because they're having, I think, they're having a team event in Vegas tonight. But no, you look at how those, kind of depth wingers are meant to fill out this team. And there's a bunch of guys that are options right now. And, given sort of how things are working at the moment, it's not like there's guys that are pressing to come in, and both Podkolzin and Pearson, like I said, are going to be on the outside looking in right now, and there's no obvious argument to get them in the lineup.
All right, we'll do this. What we do, I won't include the Florida game, which is a week today, just because we'll do that in next week's video. So 3 games between the recording of this on our next video: Vegas and San Jose on the road, back-to-backs on the weekend, and Washington at home next Tuesday. How many of those do they win?
I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to say 2 wins. I think, like I said, they need to take a split this weekend, and I just think that home game against Washington, obviously, there is a lot. It's the Canucks are in kind of the middle of a very busy schedule. Games every other night. Third and 4, but they've surprised us already. They surprised us last night a little bit. I think they got to take that win. I'm going to say two wins in the next 3 games.
All right, so woodiesrv.com road report. woodiesrv.com. Our friends here, I always like to get your thoughts about the road And I will tell you, Patrick, I'll double your salary if you get us the details of this Canucks team event in after the fact. Canucks team event in Vegas. I'm just kidding, because I actually don't have the power to double anyone's salary, but I would put in a good word for you. The Hangover Part 4, maybe. Who knows? I know it's a very popular destination for teams on the road. What do you think about going to Vegas? Have you covered a game there before? It has been a neat story how fans have adopted this team.
Yeah, no, it's my second time here. I went once, my first year covering the team, and that was a similar scenario where the Canucks had a couple extra days ahead of their game. They played on a Sunday. We were in Arizona. I think it was on the Thursday night. They had a game in Vegas on the Sunday. And I mean, at the time, I thought, I'm like, it struck me as terrible planning, which is that they did the usual thing, which was that they got on the plane right after the game on Thursday and flew to Vegas, which meant that essentially they had 3 nights in Vegas. And, you know, these guys are professionals and what, but, you know, Vegas is a tempting place, and these are young men, and you could see that had been a bad choice. It was one of the worst Canucks performances I've ever seen on that Sunday. And so, you know, partly, you know, the Canucks, partly because the game was late, partly because it's a long way to the airport. The team stayed over Wednesday night here in Vancouver. They flew, or sorry, in Denver. They flew to Vegas on Thursday morning. They've got this team event Thursday night. You know, in the end, you're going to have a big night. I have no doubt about that. They're practicing on Friday, you know, keep them honest, and then they've got the game on Saturday. It's a unique challenge, no doubt. I do find myself, now that Vegas has been in the league for a while, the sort of novelty of it, I wonder if it's a little less sensational, a little less wild, a little more, it's just another road city. I mean, obviously, in the end, they stay on the Strip. They're staying, you know, right by, they're at the, well, it used to be the Mandarin, I don't know what it's called now, but, you know, right near the rink in that Aria complex.
Where are you staying?
The beautiful Weston.
That's good. Better than the Excalibur.
yeah. But no, it's in the end, it's still like there's a lot to do. There's a lot of options, and you know,
I do remember, Patrick. I remember the first year of Vegas in the league. Our dear departed friend Jason Botchford telling a story that had been relayed to him by other Canuck players, and I won't mention the players' names because that's tacky and gossipy, and probably could get me in legal trouble. But Jason had been told by several sources there were 2 Canucks on the first trip to Vegas who were literally bouncing up and down in the aisles. They had their days planned out. They knew, like, they couldn't wait to get there. They had their party scenario done. You know, this is a while ago, right? This is their first game in Vegas. But it was a novelty for the players, and it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And these players had to, like, physically be told, get in your seats. We're not landed yet. Such was the excitement. I think it's a little different now. But it's now, and frankly, beyond it, when they were an expansion team, as good as they were, now comes with the expectation that this is a very good team and you better be on your game going up.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. And, you know, I mean, it was something I remember writing. I'm trying to think when it was. It must have been last year. You know, especially after you know, having dealt with COVID restrictions and not being able to go anywhere, and you know, the players themselves are under like league mandated policies to keep the league going, keep games happening, and obviously,
and we all know no one violated any of those. Was they all?
No, you know, and you know, but you know, there was that sort of, you go to Florida, and you know, it's nice out. You go to California, it's nice out. You know, when Vancouver was rainy and wet, and you know, you in the middle of a West Coast winter. You know, and I said, guys, how hard is it to sort of focus on the job? Because you know, in the end, it's their job. And you know, they all said, no, listen, like, we know what we have to do. But you know, mentally, there's always that challenge. Everybody, you know, anybody who goes somewhere hot and warm when you're living somewhere that's cold and damp, you know, that is going to draw your attention and draw yourself away from what you need to be. And, you know, in the end, that is the challenge of Vegas, is that, you know, in the end, lots of people go there for quote unquote work, but we know how things go for people who don't have to perform on a hockey rink. And so, you know, you can sort of only extrapolate how that might go for, you know, if you're actually having to do your job. Your job involves being physical, skating, and what have you. So it's a challenge. There's no doubt it's going to remain a challenge, even as it perhaps the novelty wears off.
Yeah, well, you can't be writing those intros to your pieces when you're hungover, Patrick. So
Never.
So behave. Yeah, behave. We do have. I want to thank. I'll let you go because I know you got to get to Vegas today. I will highlight that you are doing your quarter poll, Mark, looking at players. You've covered some of it here. You'll get much more in depth in Patrick's story, theprovince.com, VancouverSun.com. And I would urge you. I know we've done some changes to our printer products that have some of our print subscribers a little upset. Sign up for our Canuck Report, the newsletter. Everything that Patrick and Ben and anything else related to the Canucks is delivered right to your inbox, growing in popularity every day. So Patrick, thanks for your hard work there. Thanks to Woody's RV for sponsoring us, and we will be back next week.
Can I edit the editor, Paul? The quarter pole is at the 3/4 mark. It's the quarter to left in the race. So all these years,
my friends,
years you've been getting. All right.
Take care.
See you next week.
Thanks, mate.